So about 2 weeks ago, Little Simz dropped her new album, Sometimes I Might Be Introvert. This is her fourth studio album, and we took more time to kind of digest this one because there's so much heavy material in there, and it truly is one of the best albums of the year. So guys, let us know in the comments your thoughts on this album. And if you're new to the channel, we actually review albums a bit differently. We actually have different categories that we grade the album on. So we start off with artist performance, then we move on to content, then we have features, production, replay value, and then finally an overall rating. And instead of actually using a numerical system, we attribute words to our feelings for each category. So we start off with bad, then move on to mid, then good, then great, then amazing, and finally perfect. So what were your thoughts going into this Little Simz album, and do you find it delivered for you?
Well, first of all, I'm going to say this. This drop went under the radar for me because I'm not too familiar with Little Simz, and this is actually my introduction. And thanks to the NFR community, I was able to get into this album and be introduced to such a wonderful artist. I mean, I'm so surprised that this dropped this year. Like, this actually might be my album of the year. And
it's up there, man.
It's up there, and we're going to give you the reasons why. So, I mean, going into this, like, I had no expectations because I was not familiar with Little Simz's material. I did know that she was from the UK and that she had gotten major co-signs because she had gone on tour with Lauryn Hill in 2019, and Kendrick Lamar even co-signed her by saying she's one of the illest out right now. So it was really cool to see how she was going to be able to form this next project, and I didn't know what to expect stylistically because I didn't know if it was going to maybe cater to that traditional UK sound, or maybe have sort of a grime aesthetic, or I didn't know if it was going to be maybe more Afrobeat influenced. Like, I didn't know where this was going to go, but
it touched a lot of ground. We'll say that.
It touched a lot of ground. So let's start with the artist performance, man. Where do you think Little Simz does best, and where do you think Little Simz strives, especially on this project, because there's so much that goes into this?
This is predominantly a hip hop album, and I think that this album, along with Gray Area and her other releases, at this point, I think we could say that she is cementing herself as not only potentially the best rapper in the UK, maybe not only the best female rapper, but one of the best rappers in the game, period. And a big, place to start looking for her talent is actually the plethora of enriched vocabulary that she unleashes on pretty much any song on this album. And she's a very socially conscious rapper, a very personal-oriented artist in the sense that she'll go very deep into her emotions, her thoughts, the questions that she has about the world. And not only that, but I mean, the performances on this album are amazing because on a song like Fear No Man, you get this double time flow from her. And although her performances might be monotone in her delivery at some points, it usually is fitting to the actual songs. Like you were saying earlier, that like it usually is matching the kind of production that she's on. And I found that was a good point.
What was the song that we were debating over when we were going through these? I believe, was it? Oh, fuck, I can't remember the song off the top of my head, but we were debating over a couple of cadences and a couple of different deliveries because you were making the argument that, I don't know, it feels a bit monotone, but I was saying that I feel as if she does that on purpose because you'll find through performances on the album that she wants to get a bit more heartfelt. She wants to knock it down a touch, and she wants to sort of make you feel and understand what she has to come in with. But let's actually get into Introvert, the starting track to this whole album. And Lil Simz did say that she wanted this to be the intro track. As soon as she made it, she said that this was going to be it. They knew it had the feeling right away. And
you enjoyed her performance on it?
I fucking loved it from start to finish. I mean, you already start to know what she's going for in this album. And I'm going to say this. She got the Lauryn Hill cosign, and I understand why.
Oh, did she? I didn't know.
She went on tour with her in 2019.
It's true. She did.
She went on tour with her. So I feel as if, like, I'm not going to say anything because like, I don't want to say anything that's going to be out of the extraordinary, but you hear the Lauryn Hill influence in her voice already. You could see the way that she structures her storytelling.
What it is, man? It's the realness. It's the realness, man.
She does not stop. Like, and not only that, but it's also the diversity in the way that she's able to deliver these songs. So, example, on something like Protect My Energy, like, it's a bit more of that's a bit more of a slower track. It has a bit more of a melody in it, and you see her singing as if then on something like Introvert or even like Women, Two Worlds Apart, I Love You, I Hate You, all songs where she's fucking spitting and she does not stop for anyone. And what I love about her performances too is that we're going to get into the content matter because it's the heaviest part of this project, but she's able to execute this on a different level because
Yeah.
she makes you feel her conviction. She makes you feel her pain in certain situations. She makes you feel what she's trying to portray. So how did you feel as if you received the album from her?
I love that she took so many risks and chances on this, man, because you'll never hear the same flow from her twice. You'll never hear the same bars repeated. And like you were saying on Protect My Energy, which is kind of this synth pop infused song, she showcases that she could sing too if she wants to. Even though it's the only song where she's actually singing on there, she does, of course, get help from Cleo Sol on certain hooks to kind of bring in a softer and vibier element to the tracks. But not only that, but I just love the experimentation. Also, how you get two styles on the same song, for example, on Rolling Stone, because on that track, we kind of start off with this aggressive UK grime flow from her.
Yeah.
And she gets very boastful, shows off her wordplay with bars like, it's all a sport, flow and archery, don't get hit with a crossbow. Like, very clever lines. Not only that, but on the second half of Rolling Stone, you see that she actually changes up her delivery completely and actually has, I would say, this electronic filter to her vocals and sounds very different. And it actually ends up being like her evil twin that we learn afterwards as she says it.
Performance was great, man.
Performance was great. Took so many risks and chances. And as a pure lyricist, truly one of the best in the game right now. So I think we have to give it an amazing rating.
Absolutely.
Without a doubt.
There's like
Close to perfect, right?
It's close to perfect, but it was like, oh, is it really like a Nas's like Illmatic sort of performance, or is it like a Kendrick Lamar GKMC performance?
Eminem, Marshall Mathers LP.
You know, like
yeah.
there's certain performances that are too legendary, maybe because we may revisit this because it's such a deep album in a couple of months, and we might give it a different rating. But for the most part, super impressed with the performance. But let's get on to the chunk of this video because the content is so fucking important in this album. And I mean, I was going back and forth with Genius. I was looking at lines. I was taking down some stuff. So content-wise, what do you think is the best song on this album?
The best song? Oh, man. There's so many to get through. I think Little Q Part 2 was really up there for me.
Do you know what's so fucking sick about that song? Okay. Because there's part 1 and part 2. The part 1's an interlude where you hear her cousin talking, and his name is actually Quittis. And I had gone through his, I believe it's Quittis, because I had gone through her Instagram and I stumbled upon this by mistake. And the whole thing is that when you go into part 2, it's like the first half of the album is kind of explaining her mindset and how she feels about certain things. And then what you get...
She's rapping from her cousin's perspective.
And then what you
right?
get on Lil Q is kind of like where that stems from, where all of this sort of, all of this meaningful knowledge and all of this stuff is coming from. And it's showing her roots. It's showing where she comes from. It's showing different, like it's showing a family member, you know? And that was fucking deep for me because I was trying to understand like where all this knowledge was coming from and if there was going to be some backstory or an origin to the album. But now you start to see the concept of the project starting to fully take shape with Little Q. So do you feel as if also the first half of the album is a bit stronger than the second half?
I would agree with that. And I think it all starts with the Introvert, where she is just giving you this lyrical onslaught talking about the injustices that she witnesses, how the government does a lot of corrupt things. Not only that, but she's, mentioning how, rappers are rapping about carrying guns on them, but there's boys and girls dying in the streets every day because of people carrying firearms and because of how there's kind of this civil unrest where she's from. And not only that, but she talks about government corruption. She talks about how that affects people living in poverty and the way that she's like, we'll find a way. As you hear Cleo Sol singing on the hook of that song, so empowering. Not only that, but then when you move on to a song like Women, it's totally about the empowerment of women and how, besides all the odds that might be stacked against them, she's able to create this anthem for women to kind of strive and prosper in this day and age. And I just love the very natural essence there is about her performance on that one. But I think the real highlights, content-wise, and I think you'll agree with me, are definitely on songs like I Love You, I Hate You, where she's actually rapping about her relationship with her father. And she says things like, my father gave me my first heartbreak when he left us. He had a family in mind. And then she's like, I also sympathize with him. I see the flip coin of it because, he at one point was just a boy and maybe he was kind of confused over what he wanted in life. And I just love the way that this whole album for me, content-wise and thematically, is her navigating through her personal experiences to find out how to gain power, to find out the kind of leader that she wants to be in her lane. Like, she has a lot of questions, and her introversion is giving her power to reflect and to take action in life.
Well, you see that on the song Introvert. I'm going to take it back to the intro because when she had talked about the song, she had said that she finds power in being an introvert. She finds power in being alone, and that she doesn't see it as a weakness. So I'm going to read out something from Introvert because I love this. I hate these conversations are surfaced. Simz the artist or Simbi the person, and that's so fucking cool because she's kind of taking it down a notch, being like, what's really happening, is like, what's going on behind the scenes? Like, to you guys, I'm Simz, but I'm really Simbi. And then she follows up with, to you, I'm smiling, but really I'm hurting. In the same song, there's another really nice passage. The devil's a liar, fulfill your wildest desires. Now, I don't want to be the one to doctor this, but if you can't feel pain, then you can't feel the opposite. The fight between yin and yang's a fight you'll never win. Like, bro, what? Like, how do you... That's the thing is, like, I was going through the content matter of this album, and I felt like I was reading, pure knowledge. Like, I felt as if I was opening a book that I never read before, and that's what I think I love about the content of this album. Not only that, but Women's beautiful because, the cultural references in this album and explaining her origins as a woman are beautiful. So she starts off the verse saying, Naija woman, got the melanin dripping, London, city girl living. So the whole thing is that Naija is a nickname for Nigeria, and she's kind of explaining how her parents were born in Nigeria and how she was based and culturally groomed in London. So it was also cool to see how she gave you explanation about her background on those types of songs. And she's also pays homage to an Ethiopian jazz scene, which is extremely prominent within other parts in the world, not too prominent within North America, but it was actually cool because she put me onto a jazz artist called Mulatu Astake, and apparently he is a major player within that industry, and I've been going through a couple of his songs.
It's good stuff.
I'm putting him in my Miles Davis rotation.
Fire.
I swear to God. So she's putting me on even more game, getting into this. So the content matter for me was such a joy to listen
to. It's phenomenal, and like going back to a song like Little Q Part 2, where she actually goes into the shoes of her cousin. She tells the story from this third person perspective, and I thought that was brilliant because she's kind of reminiscing over this life-changing event where her cousin almost died because he was stabbed from another boy, and she has this line that says, "The boy who stabbed me is just as damaged as me." And then she goes on with, "You're dealt the same cards from the system you're enslaved in." So she's kind of, from his perspective, sympathizing with this boy because they both had these circumstances growing up that were so difficult for them to cope through, and that led them to doing these unlawful decisions. And I just love the fact that Little Simz wants to be the voice for the voiceless, much like Kendrick Lamar and how what he did on songs like Sing About Me, I'm Dying of Thirst, where he told somebody else's story. I love the idea that she knows that these stories are often untold and she wants to bring them to life. I think it's brilliant. Apart from that, a big standout for me as well.
2 Worlds Apart was massive for me. 2 Worlds Apart was really good.
I would say that How Did You Get Here was really good because she's kind of talking about the underdog story, how she went, from being a struggling musician to being one of the most recognizable names in the UK. And that to me felt like an AM PM song that you would get off a Drake album because she's reminiscing over that underdog story, and it kind of has a vocal sample in the background, so a lot of similarities there. And of course on the outro, Misunderstood, beautiful stuff talking about how there's a distance between her and her sister. So I think that this album thematically and conceptually is really her finding her way in life through her roots, through what she questions about society. And I feel like her navigating through this journey was really brought to life also by the interludes on this album, which play a big role because you hear it on songs like Gem's interlude, on Never Make Promises interlude, where it's kind of like a fairy godmother presence where she's kind of telling her, take your time, breathe, you'll climb the top of the mountain, you'll get there. And it's kind of like this album feels like her journey. It feels like her fairy tale into finding her place in the world. And I loved it from start to finish.
I think that I think it may be the first time we give content matter a perfect rating, but the content is perfect. Like there's not a single flaw here. She touches upon so many different types of messages and ideologies and allows you to understand them in such a simple way where it's explaining it from her perspective, where, you know, she uses her knowledge and, you know, her introvert part of herself to be able to navigate in life. And she's also talking about the climate of the industry in certain songs. She's talking about different old passages that made her the artist that she is today and the person that she is today. She's also talking about the duality between, you know, Simz the artist and Simbi the person that's behind all this music. So it was beautifully put together. There's not a single gripe with the content for me. But let's move on to the features, because it wasn't too heavy as a feature list, but
which I loved.
It wasn't needed, because you go through this whole track list and, you know, you want to hear Little Simz speak. You want to hear her give that introspection. So, do we start off with Cleo Sol? I think that's
Cleo Sol, who's the most featured artist. She makes 3 appearances on this. She's on Introvert. She's on Woman, and then finally she is on
I See You.
I See You. That's right. So, I loved what she did here, because she was usually on a bridge or a chorus or a refrain, and she always kind of added in this extra dazzle where it's kind of like, it's so refreshing to hear her soulful singing, because I feel like there's a lot of passion behind her vocals. And not only that, but it kind of feels like, you know, something that I would hear off of the Supremes. Like it has that very 70s kind of sound.
It does.
So
and
that vintage vocals sounded great.
Her voice is angelic. Like her chorus on Woman was beautiful. I love how you go from 0 to 100 and leave the dust behind. You've got this all action, no talk. And she's doing it in a way where you can't necessarily make out all of the words at first, because she's in such a high pitch and it kind of, you know, it's so glitz and glam. But then again, like that bright light is needed on certain songs, because the album could touch upon darker content matter, and she adds that extra bright light to it, which was very well fucking needed. And the fact that there wasn't too many features on this, and the fact that, you know, there wasn't 50,000 different fucking rappers trying to get on this track list was a
shouldn't have been.
It was a super well calculated move, because then the message wouldn't have been as coherent as it was.
It's all about her story.
Like you need to give Little Simz the runtime on this, and you needed artists that were going to maybe only provide those choruses or those
complimentary stuff. You know what I mean? It never took up the bulk of the song, and that's what I love too. Because even if you look at, I don't want to butcher the name here, but Obon Javar's feature on the song
Point and Kill,
he kind of brings this Nigerian flavor to his vocals, and again, that was just for the intro of the song, and she carried the duration of the song. That's what I loved about this album, is that it's her journey. It's about her reflecting on the atrocities in the world, and also as a leader and as someone who has such a big voice, how she could make a difference. And for her to tell that story, she couldn't have had too many, other artists on the track list, because that would have just taken away from the message, which is, like I said, it's her story, it's her journey. So Cleo Sol's additions were beautiful to me. And how did you feel about Obon Javar?
I love the way that he actually is it a gentleman or a woman?
I believe it's a man.
I believe it's a man, but just because the accents were making me unsure. But for the most part, I love the way that he was able to introduce the songs, and then again, like, already gets you into the rhythm of things. So you were kind of into it. So it really did well for me, and I think that the features were great. I don't think that they were amazing to the point where it was like an MBDTF situation where they were perfect, or like you had gotten a crazy amount of features.
Well, it wasn't a big part of the album, so like
it was minimal, but it was a very well calculated move, and it was a great move. So on that note, I think the features were great, and it did add a lot to this project, but in a very minimal way. But let's actually move on to the production, and most of the production was actually taken care of Inflow, a very how could I say it?
Highly respected producer, multi-instrumentalist.
Not only that, but how could I say it? He's a frequent collaborator with Little Simz. So just being able to hear his influence on this project was fucking beautiful, because you hear so much diversity within the project. You have a lot of violins, you have a lot of great drum patterns. You also have some chop and screw beats where he's taking and flipping samples. So how did you feel about the production overall, and how do you feel as if it played into the album?
I loved it, man. I felt like a lot of these songs to me were like James Bond theme music. You know what I mean? It had this very grandiose sound, and that's because you had a lot of orchestral pieces here. You had a lot of symphonies. You had a variety of instruments on so many songs. But then you can take it to a song like Two Worlds Apart,
With the
where
Smokey
he
Robinson.
shows that he's a
Yeah.
master of placing a sample like the Smokey Robinson sample that's present on
The
there.
agony and the ecstasy.
Yeah, and letting, Simz's vocals run through there. So I think he did an excellent job overall, and truly those orchestral arrangements is what made it, because you don't hear that in hip hop anymore. You don't hear these beats that feel so grandiose that actually have, live instrumentation. You don't get that anymore. And to me, in terms of in your face and big scale beats, this album is maybe the best produced album of the entire year.
It's definitely one of them. Even on Little Q Part 2, where there's kind of like these there's these background vocals that create a dreamy atmosphere where it almost feels as if, you're reminiscing with Little Simz, like, because she's going through a flashback and she's kind of taking you to the younger days. So it was cool to see the way that they were able to create the soundscape of this album, because it was well done, and it was at a point where you were going through the album and you were trying to understand what Little Simz was saying, and the production helped you get there. The production guided you through this whole album. It felt as if, Inflow was holding my hand throughout this whole story, and I was just watching, Little Simz, create this beautiful
very
canvas.
cinematic.
It
man.
did. It was
That's
a
what it
cinematic album, and it was like, it was minimalistic, but it was also very grand at the same time. I don't even know how to explain it. It was
I
just
don't think it was minimalistic at all,
but there
man.
were certain
it was
times.
super grand.
There were certain times where it was because
A few beats, not many.
because you had to have Little Simz have that runtime where she was just talking and she was just giving you her time. So it was also well calculated in that part.
Yeah,
So
and I also felt like a lot of beats had a lot going on. If you look at Fear No Man, for example, you get these very angelic organ chords. You also get, these chants that are coming through, and then you also end off with these tribal drums, and there's so much compacted into one production, but yet it still sounds very well developed. And I mean, not only that, but I just love the way that the beats were perfectly, complemented by her performances. There was never any lack of understanding between the beats and the actual performances. So I love the triumphant sound. I love, on a song like Introvert, for example, the alarming horns, the violins that play through, the marching band-like drums. There's just so many elements to appreciate. And like I said, this is the most grandiose album production-wise, and probably the one that has the most epic level scale for, actual instruments. And an album that sounds like this is what the fuck I was missing, man. This was a true experience, and it felt very cinematic, and it gave me an experience like I haven't had all year.
So, on that note, I think we got to give it an amazing rating. It was an
100%.
amazing experience from start to finish. Again, I mean, perfect to us is like the 2001 Chronic, or
Something that's really innovative and kind of.
But this was just amazingly executed. Like it was just like nothing that you heard all year. And the thing is that it's coming from a rapper that doesn't necessarily get the most light in the North American market. So to be able to grab people's attention and to be able to create this beautiful environment was fucking amazing.
Great soundscape.
But let's actually get into the replay value now. This is a massive part of NFR's experience when we're reviewing albums, and this kind of indicates where we think this album is going to place with us and how we think it's going to sit with us over the next couple of months to a year. So what are your takedowns from this, and how are you liking the track list from start to finish?
It's great, man. I just love how much depth this album has, and I think that's why it's going to stay in my rotation, because it leaves kind of these impactful blueprints on how to tackle love, how to tackle your insight, and how to manage your thoughts. Not only that, but also just so many messages that will have importance, like the way that you value your family and the way that you want to present yourself to the world. Like so many impactful things. Not only that, but like I said, such a different and unique album. I love how unique her voice is. She sounds like no other artist that I listened to in 2021. So getting that UK flavor mixed in with so much lyricism will make this last in my rotation. And what's interesting too is that, I mean, I don't listen to too much UK hip hop, but she's kind of opening that door a little more for me now.
Yeah,
she's making me want to revisit a lot of other artists. So it will stay in my rotation. What about you?
Oh, it's going to stick through my rotation through the whole year because it's one of my favorite of the year so far. Like, I got everything I wanted on this project. I got, crazy content matter. I got great lyricism from her. I also got beautiful cinematic production, and there's so much to dive into this album when it comes to thematic messaging and when it comes to ideologies that I'm gonna want to go and dive back in because I might want to have a fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth, 10th, like whatever it is, how many listens I need just to be able to understand certain ideologies in full and to be able to go through this whole album. So I don't know, man. I'm feeling between an amazing and perfect rating.
I'm feeling amazing.
You're feeling amazing on this? I think I'm going to go amazing on this. Yeah, absolutely. Like the thing is that I feel as if as I'm going to go through the months, I might pick up on more. I'm going to want to revisit her discography more. So I'm going to maybe put this to the side for a bit in a couple of months. But for the most part, over the next couple of months, this will be my biggest standout for me.
So speaking on the album as a whole, I think that Little Simz delivered arguably a masterpiece here, which is so rich in content matter. You have a wide range of vocal performances that lend your ear to all of the poetic techniques that she offers in terms of her rhyme structure, in terms of her double time flows. She offers so much, and this album is really, it's Simbi looking inwards. It's her trying to discover who she wants to be, what kind of leader she wants to be, and also, thinking about the power of her introversion, and also, what kind of messages does she want to spread out into the world? What kind of person does she want to present herself as in her personal life, but also as a public image? So I feel like with all the sounds and with everything that she wanted to say here, she checked every box, and I feel like this will end up being one of the best albums of the year, and it might be my album of the year right now. I have to see. Nas's King's Disease 2 is still there. Tyler's Call Me If You Get Lost is still in the mix, so I'll have to see, but it's up there for me.
It's definitely up there for me too, and I love the message of this album. I love the introspection. I love how vulnerable you could feel with her, because the thing is that it's so hard to be able to be vulnerable like that while being able to be coherent and while being able to keep focus on a track list. So that's what I love about it. Not only that, but I love the effort from track to track. Like there's not a single song that feels like, hey, this is going to waste, or this doesn't feel like it was well executed. Like everything felt as if it had a purpose on this track list. So I love that part to it as well. Talking about Inflow's, cinematic production, and talking about, the way that Little Simz comes in and presents you these hard ideologies and, puts them into such a simple way for you to digest was really well done to me as well. Not only that, but when it comes to messaging and thematic bases, this is up there for me with King's Disease 2, and that's what I feel as if is going to be my head-to-head battle when it comes to a pure hip-hop album.
Yeah.
This is what hip-hop is supposed to sound like, and this is the way it's supposed to be executed. So on that note, I think the overall rating of this album is amazing. It was an amazing listen from start to finish. You're not going to be disappointed on any aspect of this project, and everything was super calculated.
I think it's a near perfect album, to be totally honest with you, and it's like nothing you'll hear this entire year. Like I said, very orchestral type production from Inflow, amazing performances all throughout by Little Simz, and she's just taking you through these messages at the beginning of the album that are very broad, but then as you go into it further and further, you realize how it relates personally to her and what she's trying to say, what mediums help her, if it's spirituality, if it's her spending time reflecting with family about what she wants to do moving forward. Just to me, probably, I would consider it a masterpiece, to be honest.
It's definitely on
phenomenal
that level
album
for me. So on that note, guys, I hope you guys enjoyed this review. And listen, if you have not heard this album, please do so. It is one of the best of the year. And congratulations to Little Simz, because this is a great piece for the industry. A masterpiece at that, and a beautiful piece of art. So guys, if you did enjoy this review, please subscribe, because we will be keeping you updated with all of the biggest releases of the year. So that's post rollout, the review itself, any sort of update that comes out, NFR has you covered, guys. So thank you for watching this whole video, and we'll catch you in the next one. Thank you for watching the video. It's always a pleasure doing content for you guys. Listen, if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel, because we're doing album reviews, and we actually have our series called Everything We Know, where we take you guys through the whole album rollout of the hottest releases of the year. Not only that, guys, but our Patreon plan is now live. You guys can access that in the bio. I appreciate you guys, and I'll see you on the next one.